and welcome to another Raw Talk session with me, Dollie IndigoStar. This is part 2 with Michael Feeley, Esoteric Knowledge and Symbolism.
Yes, I read something that you wrote in your book about Atlantis being part of the mind and the two pillars, and in the middle is Atlantis. What is the mind? Can you touch a little bit on base on this?
Yeah, of course. When you look into the work of Plato, and he was really historically the only person to have mentioned Atlantis. Now, a lot of people think that Giza and Egypt was based upon Atlantis, when it was actually based upon Mars. But when you look at Plato's work and you look at some of the cipher and the encrypted messages that he was giving you, he talks about Atlantis being sort of an ideal island, the perfect island. Now, when you look at the human spine, which has 33 vertebrae, which is why you have 33 degrees of masonry, etc., etc. It's Jacob's ladder. The spine is Jacob's ladder. Now, the 33rd mention of Jacob in the Bible mentions Jacob's ladder. Yes. So there's another clue. Now, the 33rd vertebrae of the human spine is known as Atlas. Atlantis means the island of Atlas. So it's talking about the region above the top vertebrae of the spine, which is the mind. Now, Plato tells you that Atlantis is the island that rules 7 islands. It's talking about the pineal gland, which is the master gland that rules the 7 chakras. And that's what he's talking about, the Golgotha, the place of skulls, where you get the light to become enlightened. So Atlantis is the island of Atlas, which is really the human mind. Now, when you take that to the island of Lemuria, Mu, Ma, Mahim, it's talking about water, but the symbol for water in Egyptian is the serpent, because none is water, but it is the serpent. So when you look at the likes of Lemuria, it's talking about the serpent, and records tell you that there were snake people walking around. It wasn't walking serpents. Snake people are the adepts and the hierophants who have gone through a metamorphosis, just as the snake sheds its skin and goes through metamorphosis.
Like a transformation? Are you talking a transforming and...
It's a transformation of self, a rebirth, a resurrection of self, because the only real resurrection is a rebirth of self. So when you look into masonry and mystery schools, they say that the people who are uninitiated are the dead. So when you rise from the dead, you are becoming enlightened, you are becoming an initiate, you are becoming part of the initiation. So you are risen from the dead. And part of this Masonic, they have a ceremony called the Rising. Now, the Rising, they are kept away from the world for 3 days, and then they rise, which is the story of Christ in the tomb. So it's talking about the rebirth of self, the metamorphosis of self. Now, all of these ancient cultures were talking about the self-conquest. Now, the number that is associated with the conqueror is 1,000. That is why you have Buddha with 1,000 lotus leaves, because 1,000 is self-conquest. So when you are an initiate, when you are privy to this sacred information, you are risen from the dead. And it's really talking about the transformation of your own vessel from the material realm, the throne, the seat of the eye, which is represented by Osiris and Orion, and you become basically the walking gods. You become connected to the cosmos. So it's really about the self-transformation through initiation, through...
A little bit like the Buddha, a bit like the Buddha going through his transformation and becoming an enlightened being up there with the gods, the godheads.
It is, and once you connect your true vessel, your divine self, and most people are living in a 3rd-dimensional cube, but they forever have the characteristics of that cube, because they are forever within the society that keeps them in that cube. Now, these ancient philosophers and these ancient adepts knew how to bypass that, and they were using sound, they were using knowledge, they were using these monoliths and monuments to open portals to travel different places. You know, 5 people disappeared from the centre of Stonehenge in 1971 because are never to be seen again. These places are where the two worlds meet. And there are certain numbers that are important as well.
Time gates. So we're talking time portals and time gates, stargates.
Well, time, stargates. I mean, time is really a universal force that keeps events separate. So, you know, we can say that the past, the present, and the future is separate because of time. So nothing changes. Time doesn't change, but things change within time. So it is a force that keeps events separate. Now, I've gone back in time, and I've had visitations where things have come forward in time to my time. So it's very lateral and linear. We can move into different time events. Now, this has been proven in science labs, backward in time travel. Now, you have something called time reversal symmetry and also time symmetry that tells you that the laws of physics is exactly the same backwards as it is going forwards. So therefore, time travel is written within the universal fabric that we're able to do. It's time symmetry, which is the laws of physics going backwards and forwards.
Astounding. So we not only have portals and stargates, we have time gates as well, where we can. Are they the same thing, or
yes,
are they different things?
Well, it's sort of corridors to different places, and some of those places are what we would deem to be the past. Now, when you look at the quantum field, quantum data, the quantum field, some people call it the Akashic records and different names, but the quantum field is really one continuous time and space. So you don't have a past, a present, and a future. It's all one. So we can actually go in, if we take a wide enough circle, we can actually go back in time and we can see other things. And
a little bit like the movie Interstellar, where they're playing with the strands in the bookcase. A little bit like that.
See, what you've been told in the movie is what is happening and what happens. So you have all of these different piezoelectric energy transmuting monoliths and monuments that are put on magnetic lines. Now, if you want to find where these ancient sites are, you follow the energy lines of Earth, because that's you will find them, because they are all connected to each other through these energy lines. But so are the stars. The stars are connected by light lines, and I've seen them. So where you have energy grids of the Earth, and you have Stonehenge connected to the Great Pyramid, connected to Teotihuacan by energy lines, the stars are also connected by the same kind of energy light lines. It's like one gigantic grid. When you see UFOs moving at 90 degrees, that is because they're skipping from reality and dimensions, which takes 90-degree angles. And that is why the ceremony of the rising for Masons is at 90 degrees, right angles, 90 degrees. The hypotenuse triangle of Stonehenge, which takes you from the heel stone to the two pits, is a triangle that forces light, polarized light, into 90-degree angles. It's how you escape the time of the movement by 90 degrees. It transcends time.
Is that why Machu Picchu is so high up? Because you have to travel up there so high, because it's the last, let's say, mystery school of the gods. Is it up there so high because it's one of the last ancient mystery schools up there for the gods, and you have to travel up there, so descend up there? It's a big walk up there, isn't it?
It is. I mean, mountains are considered sacred because they are close to God, close to the divine. So the higher you are, the closer to the divine you are. So that is really an ascension school in the mountains, because it was close to God. Okay. But it's the same as, you know, the likes of some pyramids, they found liquid mercury there, and they can't understand why they found liquid mercury, because it's alchemical ascension. It's sulfur, salt, and mercury is the triangle, the tria prima of alchemy. Alchemy, alchem, takes you back to Egypt, who were alchemists. The word priest comes from magush, which is magi, which is magician, which is alchemist. When you see a griffin on a church, it represents sulfur and mercury. So that's why you have these strange looking things on churches and different sites around the world. They were all, the singular message of the ancients was self-conquest and enlightenment. And as a result of that self-conquest and enlightenment, they became the gods.
And all these compounds as well are in our blood and in our makeup. We are this makeup. We are the stars. We are the earth as well, and all these minerals and elements. These compounds are really important to us as well. I know sodium and salt especially is important to the diet, and the pineal gland especially. If your body deteriorates of salt and sodium levels, that's it. You're basically on death's door. So that kind of like makes sense. And as well, we've got a lot of precious metals in our blood, and we are the earth and the stars. Astounding how all this esoteric knowledge is kind of there, written for us in plain sight. For us to follow our path of ascension, if you like.
It's all there, and again, that's the story of Lot's wife. When she turns around and turns to salt, he's talking about the alchemical process, because that is the last part of the physical body during the alchemical process. So the story of Lot's wife turning to salt is talking about alchemy. Now, when you look at the Egyptian word for star, it is Esbar, which means gateway, doorway.
Interesting.
So that they are talking about the gateway to the duet, to the river in the sky, the travel by the boat, Nibiru, which is represented with the gigantic boat inside the Great Pyramid. It's talking about the enlightened soul going on this journey. Now, they talk about the enlightened soul because they've gone through initiations, they've gone through many, many years of their life just focusing on the transmutation of self, transmuting the inner realm. You know, the kingdom of God is within you. That's what it means. And they were doing everything to transmute this vessel to a higher place, and that's through sound, through all different ways, through rituals, sound. You know, these monuments are crystalline orchestras, and they're all over the earth. And I've been to Stonehenge, and one of my friends has made the stones sing back to us.
I've heard it. I can vouch for that because I've been to Stonehenge as well quite often, and I've said specifically to people, I've heard the stones sing. They make a noise. It's almost as though some of them sound hollow, like they're made of metal or something. I've actually slept on the grounds itself and felt the heartbeat of all the people there. Astounding place, astounding. And Avebury, that has a huge connection with it as well, doesn't it? And Mars, especially Mars. Yeah.
Well, in planispheres, Stonehenge is twinned or connected to Saturn. Now, the crop circle phenomena is basically sound coming from the rings of Saturn, and it's being picked up by Stonehenge, which is the aerial. And that is why the majority of crop circles are in Avebury and around Stonehenge, because it's coming from Saturn, it's being picked up by Stonehenge, and we're getting the impression in the harvest in the grass, because each sound has a shape. So when we see these beautiful, intricate geometric shapes, that is the sound of the environment. Now, Avebury represents the Earth and Mars. Now, when you get a map overlay of the Sidonian city on Mars and you put it over Avebury, it is an exact match. Geometrically and everything else it's an exact match. So these places are twinned and correspond to different planets.
Astounding. And there's also my husband is an anomaly hunter, and I shared a picture with you. I sent you a picture. There's been a couple of pictures that have come from Mars that kind of look similar to henges and things like that. Michael, can I ask you, what do you think about Mars? Do you think that it was civilization was there?
Yes, and most likely there still is. What Mars is as well, it is a halfway house. If you can imagine going on a long journey, and you think let's just pull in at the services and have a break, let's have a refresher. That's what Mars is for a lot of interstellar travel. So Mars, there has been civilizations there. There still is, and when you see the likes of the Sidonian city, which has been geometrically mapped out at 19.5 degrees, 19.5 degrees. is significant. It is the energy belt of Earth where all the major pyramids are, between 19 and 20 degrees, which is 19.5 degrees. Even the anomalies of nature, when you see a tornado, when you see it, that they are 19.5 degrees of the equator. When you look at the Nineveh constant, which is one singular mathematical formula for the movement of all the planets, it is 19.5 degrees, it's 19.5. So it's a significant geometric number in terms of energy of Earth and energy of other planets. So there certainly has been life on Mars. I think there still is, as with the moon, as with other planets that we're told life can't exist. I've seen pictures from contactees who've shown me life on Titan, which is one of the moons of Saturn, and so on and so on. There's lots of things going on here that our authorities are not telling us. And, you know, it's quite obviously that there has been life, or certainly still is, settlements on the likes of Mars.
Interesting. I also know that you are working on some things up there with David Icke in his studio at the minute. Tell us a little bit about your series that you've got coming along.
What I've been asked to do, there's a couple of things that have led up to this, where I've done other things, and as a result of doing those things, they're wanting me to do other things. Now, what they want me to do, and what we are going to be doing, I think the first week of May, is filming a 12-part documentary over a week, where they've asked me to present for my own documentary. So what I will be doing is taking different what you think are different subjects. So one week I may talk about religion and the origins of a religion. The next episode may well be about Egypt. The next one will be the edge of Easter Island. The next one may be about Mars or Sardinia. So it'll go different, sort of, each episode will seemingly be a different subject, but at the end of that I will bring it all together and say, no, actually it's all one subject, and what you've heard through the series, it's all connected by a common esoteric it's by a common esoteric theme. And what I will also go into as well about how the monuments of Earth, with their longitude and latitude coordinates, two-dimensional coordinates, are telling us mathematically their precise location. Not only their location, but the location of other monuments on Earth and on planet Mars. Now, when you look at the diameters and longitude and latitude of the face on Mars, for example, it tells you exactly how to find Stonehenge, and so on and so on. So it's almost like a mathematical satellite navigation system for star travelers.
What do you think about the new NASA Perseverance rover going up there searching for ancient life? Do you think they're going to uncover anything?
They already know, but it's part of an illusion, a part of a smokescreen to forever get people thinking, oh, you know, one day we might find it, or one day we may have the answers. It's almost like the donkey and the carrots, because they know full well that there are other existences. Now, there are, I guess, you know, your standard NASA scientists may just go along with it, but they know. And if they do find anything, the public are not going to see that anyway. It's going to be edited, unless, you know, people sneak these photographs out prior to being edited. But they know what's there, that they know. I mean, they know the civilizations there, that they've interacted with these civilizations. Why wouldn't they? If I've interacted with them, if you've interacted with them, why wouldn't departments above government be interacting with them? Because it makes sense, doesn't it? And, you know, they know, but it's part of the illusion of keeping people in the dark about things. You know, that they keep people in the dark about everything. The whole of history that we are taught from school age is false. It is false history. You know, I remember learning Christopher Columbus found the Americas. Well, he didn't, because there's evidence in the architecture of Rosslyn Chapel in Scotland that says he didn't.
Yes.
And this is just one thing. So history is false. Belief systems are false. They are basically keeping people in the dark. You know, when you have the likes of the Bible, which I say originally is the Giza Plateau, Noah's Ark is the Great Pyramid, so on and so on. Now, when you look at the likes of the Bible, it is really an allegorical book that has been misconstrued as history. and it's metaphorical. It's metaphorical about the things that I've just spoken about. How the ascension of self. When you know, and it was interesting. You said at some point, I don't know if it was before the show or during the show, when you were saying that you were told to read from right to left.
Yes.
Now, the interesting thing about that is if I was to hand a Bible to someone there, now the Torah, the Hebrew scriptures, is the 5 books of Moses, which is Genesis to Deuteronomy. Now, I guarantee if I was to do an experiment now and I pass someone a Bible, they pick up that Bible and they'd read it like a book.
Yeah, it's got to be read the other way. Yeah.
It's got to be read from Deuteronomy to Genesis, from right to left. Yes. That's how Hebrew was written. Then Genesis is the beginning and the end. Because in the beginning was the word, which is the circle. So the beginning is the end is the beginning. The end, if you read it from Deuteronomy to Genesis, you get a completely different interpretation. And that is one of the things that are not being taught. You know, even how to read the most read book in the world, people are not being taught how to read it correctly. So you are getting a completely different translation. So all of these little things that we should be knowing, all of these things that are not being taught, all of these things that are deliberately kept from us, if we do the groundwork, if we do a lot of effort, if we do research and look into these things, it is as obvious as a black dot on white paper. But you have to look into these things. And you know, the pyramids, which for me was created at 432 hertz, because when you do sound experiments at 432 hertz, you get the shape of the tetrahedron, the pyramid. When you look at how each of the stones inside the Great Pyramid is a different octave. When I did a mathematical formula for the speed of reality, there was this long number, extremely long number that kept coming up in my formula. Weeks later, when I was looking at the sonics of the Great Pyramid, the exact same digits came up as a sonic of the Great Pyramid. So,
interesting connections. How do you think that happened? Do you think you channeled and downloaded that?
I think
frequency, harmonics. Is it what we're doing with our blood? Is it what we activate? This is one of the questions that I ask, because I'm like you, Michael, and I ask, why me? Why do I know these things? Because I'm nobody special. I've not been educated in Cambridge or Oxford, but we know these things. How? Why?
Well, I've been told that from a child I was chosen to do this. So even though I had no awareness of it, I was just being a child. I was playing football. I was doing, you know, postman's not knocking on doors and running away. I was doing the same things that children do, but I was being observed. I was being watched throughout my childhood into my adulthood because I was chosen to do this. Now, in 2010, my wife and I was deciding where we wanted to go on vacation, and we both had a strong feeling that we wanted to go to Egypt, but we knew it wasn't just a holiday. It wasn't just a vacation. There was something going on. Strangely, I think it was about 10 days before we went, I had a strange email from a psychic medium from Scotland who I didn't know. I'd never met her. I didn't know. She just said, "I have a message for you," and it was along the lines of, regarding your trip to Egypt, you are going to uncover many great knowledges, many great insights that are going to be added to your toolbox, and it's basically it will be brought. The past, the present, and the future will be brought together because it's all in one place, and that I need to get to the closest to the right hand side of the Sphinx as I possibly can, because all this ancient knowledge is going to be added to my toolbox. And it literally just came out of the blue, and I still have the email that came in 2010. And when we got there, you know, I went inside the Great Pyramid, I went into the museum, I went down the Nile. Nothing seemingly happened, but 7 years later, then it happened. And all of these things, you know, scarab beetles coming out the wall, Kundalini serpents scurrying across the floor. Believe it or not, I even had a visitation from a pharaoh that was walking alongside me, and I was actually put inside some kind of protection bubble in order to... So
do you think you activated something in your blood? Is it something in our blood? Is it genetics? Is it ancestral? Is there an ancestral connection? Because you touched on this earlier and just touched on that briefly, and I'm one of these great believers that we are our ancestors. I said this to you the other day, that we are literally thousands of years old when we put it into a time scale. We can't put one on it. We've been here. Our ancestors are within our skin, blood and roots now. Do you think we are accelerating that knowledge by activating these keys within us, and our ancestral DNA is waking up within us and we're remembering this more?
Yeah, I mean, an enlightened soul uses 100% of DNA, junk DNA, whatever you call it. But when you look into genetics and you look into a branch of genetics called haplogroup DNA, haplogroup DNA is basically a transfer through different generations of basically knowledge within the blood, within genetics. And that is one of the reasons that Egyptian royalty that started the ancestral relationships, marrying to brothers and wives and husbands, and because they believe that this ancient sacred knowledge, and it gets transferred from generation to generation to generation. And that is why we now have a modern day royal family that engages in the same kind of incest. And when the media tells us that the likes of Middleton is not related to the royals, yes, she is, because they can only marry into a royal lineage, because of the haplogroup DNA transfers their sacred knowledge through bloodlines. So yes, it comes through. Now, when you look at ancestral knowledge and ancestral information, that is stored in the X chromosomes. So that is the planet X within us, because the X chromosomes store your ancestral knowledge, which comes through to now, and it gets passed on to your children and their children. And it's basically it's this sacred knowledge, and that is why they intermarry in their own family, because they want to keep that sacred knowledge to themselves. So yes, it is also a genetic thing. Now, I think when I went to Giza, when I went to Egypt, when I went inside the Great Pyramid, I think nothing happened consciously then, but it activated something within me. Some key was turned. Something happened.
Something within your pineal gland and kundalini all activating.
Yeah, which again, 7 years on, exactly 7 years on, which is relevant to the chakras. It's relevant to the word queen. It's relevant to the Sabbath. It's relevant to Noah, because Noah is Nuak, which is basically Shabbat, which is the Sabbath, which is the 7. Now, what that's talking about is the completion of the 7 till you get to the crown, the netta. And that is, again, the transmutation of self, the arcane knowledge. And all of these things, the number 7 is relevant to. And it happened 7 years, dead on 7 years from when I went to Egypt, when things started to happen from a sacred, sort of ancient perspective.
And sadly, that was the end of session 2, but part 3 will be upcoming at Stonehenge and Avebury with Maria Wheatley and Michael Feeley. Stay tuned for more. Don't forget to click like, subscribe and share. Thanks for watching.